But for more on this, I am joined by our political panel. In our Sydney City studio today is National Senator Matthew Canavan, and in our Melbourne studio, Greens Senator Janet Rice. Thanks both for your time today. And if I can start with you, Matthew Canavan, one example, if you like, from this Group of Nine call about, a lack of discussion, a lack of boldness for reform that struck me was when superannuation was on the cards from Labor last week. The first thing that Tony Abbott said was, well, of course, Labor would hike taxes. Is that the sort of short-termism that these business groups are talking about?
Well, Tom, I actually have a slight disagreement with the Group of Nine. I actually think this government's been one of the most reforming in our history. If you look at what the Abbott government has done in the first 18 months, it's said no to ASC, no to SBC, no to Qantas, no to Holden, no to Ford. It's made massive changes and proposed changes last year to the Medicare system. Yes, since we moved away from, but didn't get support from people. We announced changes to universities, which we're still committed to. I think they're very worthwhile and meritable reforms. We made a start in tapering the growth in public sector wages as well, with Defence Force changes. Now, all of those changes have been incredibly unpopular and has come at some cost to our polls. But this is much in contrast to, say, the first year of the Howard government, when I used to work at the Productivity Commission, and I remember the Howard government and Howard and Costello rejecting their recommendations to cut car tariffs in their first year. So to say that there's not been reforms proposed by this government is completely not true. What is true is that there hasn't been reforms supported by other political parties.
Okay, but the call to arms appears to have come from the PM saying the next budget will be dull, almost boring, and that's their point here, isn't it? That yes, there were big ideas and proposals, but now they're not even being swapped for alternatives. We're told now we've got to protect household budgets instead. There has been a loss of appetite for reform from the PM in particular.
I reject that completely. We are pushing forward with lots of changes now. Obviously, we've still got to try and get support in the Senate, but it is important also that we do take the Australian people with us. It's not true that there are problems with this country that require radical surgery. I don't believe that at all. What we do need to do is get back onto a path of fiscal prudence. What we do need to do is get back into some kind of responsible government decision making, which we lost in the Rudd-Gillard years. That's absolutely what we do need to do. But we don't need to make radical changes in this country. We have a good country. Small changes to a better world will be the best option, and we are doing that now through the changes we made last year and continuing those, I'm sure, through this next budget.
Janet Rice, if I can get your thoughts, because I was interested in this recent policy from the Greens on progressive tax of superannuation. Are we going to see more of these sorts of policies from the Greens, ones that save money more so than spending proposals?
Well, it's a combination, Tom. And the Greens basically want to see changes that are going to have us creating the type of society we want, which is one that's caring, that's healthy, that's innovative, and that's acting on global warming. So we want to stop the attacks on ordinary people and instead be raising revenue from the people who can afford to pay. So our proposal, which we put to the Prime Minister of progressive reform of super, would raise $10 billion. Other reforms, such as getting a carbon price would raise $18 billion, for example. We're now paying money to be tackling global warming rather than raising money from doing it. There's a whole range of measures stopping the sort of taxpayer support for the fossil fuel industry, another $10 billion that could be saved. These are the sorts of measures that the Greens would support, that actually be shifting our society to one that is caring, that's tackling global warming, and creating the type of society we want.
Can I just say something?
And yet they're all, of course. Yeah, if I can just one more question to Janet Rice. If I can ask you, though, because they're all very core green policies, essentially. So what the Business Council is talking about perhaps is things that aren't something at the Greens' heart, proposing something of a compromise rather than simply what the Greens have supported all along.
Well, I think basically there's probably some overlap between what we want and what the Business Council are calling for, but the bottom line is there's got to be things that are going to be tackling rising inequality, that are going to be acting on global warming that are going to be creating a more caring society. And if there are reform measures that the Business Council is coming up with that are going to be doing those, they're the sorts of measures the Greens would support. And the whole point of tax is to be raising revenue to create the society that we want. And so we need to work out how we do that, and to be getting a caring, innovative, healthy society at the same time as having the money to pay for the things we need.
Okay, Matthew Canavan, I will get your thoughts now, but can I also ask you, you mentioned before that you've tried to go ahead with these reforms and they were very unpopular, it cost you in the polls. Why do you think that is? I
think tough decisions are always tough. Tom, there's no secret about that. It's happened in Queensland, it happened in New South Wales. New South Wales were able to get back into government, but I don't believe they made as many tough decisions as we did in Queensland, and that did cost us over time. There's no getting away from that. It happened in the Hawke-Keating era, it happened in the Howard era. Making tough choices doesn't always give you a response in the polls, but what you hope to show is that you're trying to take the country to a better place, you're trying to deal with the major issues we face, and the Group of Nine are absolutely right that one of the big issues we face is our fiscal situation. Now the Greens have policies that they want to deal with that situation through increased taxes. I don't support that, because increased taxes are going to reduce our economic growth, reduce our productivity and reduce our ability to deal with those issues. I would also just want to add and respond to Senator Rice. She mentioned that she's willing to support things that are compromises. Well, last year the Coalition put forward a proposal to re-index fuel excise. It was Greens policy. It was actual Greens policy, and they still rejected it. They still rejected it. So I take it with a bit of grain of salt what the Greens propose, because every time we propose something that is even their policy, they'll reject it because it comes from a person called Tony Abbott, not Christine Milne.
If I could
Senator
jump
Rice,
in there.
that has been a criticism from other people. Yeah, I'll yet let you respond to that, because that has been a criticism that the Greens are so locked into having to get their way because the money being raised from that wasn't spent the way you wanted it to. You wouldn't support it. It seems to be you get everything you want or nothing at all.
No, it was in the proposal to increase fuel excise within the context of a really cruel, uncaring, unfair budget that was putting all of the pressure on the people that could least afford to pay. And so in the absence of any measures that were going to offset the impact of increasing fuel excise on low income people, and particularly people who've got no choice but to drive their cars, we weren't able to support it. I mean, you've got people who haven't got the choice of public transport, who are having to drive long distances, living in outer suburban areas with no public transport. The Greens have always had it on the table that, look, if we were having federal support for public transport that could actually give people the choice to be shifting away from having to drive their cars and having to be paying out, hundreds of dollars a week for some people in petrol, well, then we'd be open to considering it. But there was no negotiation over that. That option wasn't on the table.
Less than a cent a litre. Less than a cent a litre.
I'm going to have to interrupt you both there, because we're going to take a quick break, but more discussion after it. Stay with us.
It's easy to create my beautiful website with Wix.
Let's go again.
If only everything in business was as easy as Wix. Go to Wix.com and create your stunning website today. It's free.
Keep Stingo's gel or spray handy for fast relief from stings and bites. Take the sting and itch out with Stingo's.
Can your payment terminal know your customers? Reward your regulars? Can it print that? Or email it? Can it help you count those? Split that? Can it go here? Or there? Introducing Albert, the payment terminal that can do all this and more. Technology to keep your business moving? CommBank can.
Forge of Empires. Develop your own city from the Stone Age to modernity. Available in the App Store and at FOE.tv. Forge of Empires. Play now.
Pedigree dog food, 700 gram, just $1.70 every day. Just $1.70 every can, every day. Every day. Every day. Every
every day at Coles.
It makes sense that you want to look after your family, and it's easy with the new Apia funeral insurance. Your family could have fast access to cash when they need it most, and in some cases, a payment could be made earlier. You can apply for cover now with no medicals, and you can choose a payment option where your premiums won't increase just because you get older. Help look after your family and receive a $50 gift card as a thank you. Applying is so easy. Call now or go online for a quote.
Hey, I just had like a cold bottle of water and I didn't have any pain.
Dig into my pizza, the first mouthful is always the best.
Ice cream, love my ice cream, so nice to be able to, you know, get that in your gob.
It's such a simple solution, really, in Sensodyne.
Sensodyne has changed my life. It may sound dramatic, it kind of is.
Nice icy cold beer. You know, I'm not trying to sell nothing, it was just, this thing was working.
Now, when I have an ice cream with my daughter, you lick the ice cream, you look at each other, you laugh, and it's a very special thing.
The special combination of 3 probiotics only in Valia gives me the added vitality I need for everything I do. It's hard to hide when you're happy inside.
You're watching Lunchtime Agenda, and Immigration Minister Peter Dutton says a 25-year-old Iranian asylum seeker is on his way to recovery after a 43-day hunger strike. Saeed Hassanlu agreed overnight to accept medical assistance after a long-running protest over a decision not to grant him refugee status. The minister says he understands people want to come to Australia, but to bow to pressure from a hunger strike would encourage similar protests. I'm joined to discuss this further by our political panel we have with us today. We've been discussing the issues with Senator Janet Rice from the Greens and also Senator Matthew Canavan from the Nationals. And Senator Rice, on this issue, I know the Greens are in strong disagreement with the government over overall policy, but to have a functioning system at all, surely it's fair enough not to bow to hunger strikes, otherwise you're going to get more and more of them.
I think we just have to show compassion. We've got to think about what drives someone to be on a hunger strike for 43 days. They were desperate. I mean, the Greens are asking for the Immigration Minister to review Saeed's case. And really, I mean...
but just on that point, so if this case is reviewed, does that not encourage other asylum seekers to get a very public review to happen, to also go on this long hunger strike that endangers their lives?
Well, I mean, if people feel the need to go on a hunger strike that endangers their life, you can only feel for them. You can only feel for what they are feeling, the persecution they're feeling, what they are concerned about being sent back to their home countries. It's a symptom of a system that's not working, that's not treating people with compassion and with care. I mean, most of the people who have come to Australia claiming to be refugees have been found to be refugees. It's through no fault of their own that they are fleeing persecution. They just want to have somewhere safe to be living their life. We've got to be, we can't be treating people cruelly.
But do you accept the public message that's sent out if the government says we are now going to review this case, that we see more and more hunger strikes?
Look, I think people have to be desperate to be hunger striking. So I think there are a lot of cases that ought to be reviewed as part of treating refugees and asylum seekers with compassion. And that's, it's...
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to get Matthew Canavan's thoughts, because this is one of those cases that we see that only occasionally comes up in the media. Why is that? Well, this secrecy around this area. We were told about Operation Sovereign Borders and not telling people smugglers, giving them indications on where the boats might be intercepted. Why is there such a media blackout almost within these detention centres? Why isn't there a light being able to be shone on this by journalists?
Well, I think for the same reasons you've outlined to Senator Rice, Tom, it is very unfortunate that people take these desperate measures, but what I hear from the Greens and from Senator Rice is a lot of feeling but not a lot of thinking. You've got to think difficult and hard about these issues, and if we gave people a platform to campaign on things like hunger strikes or any kind of self-harm, we'd simply encourage more of it, and I don't want to see that happen. I think for the same reasons we've been introduced tougher measures on our borders, we need to be tough on these issues as well, because all we will do is encourage more people to risk their lives by coming here. All we will do is...
Right, but when you look at the conditions inside, I mean, it's not even just about a platform, but journalists being able to look at conditions, report what's happening in there. I mean, this speaks almost to being an open democracy or otherwise, does it? These things. Labor did it as well, but the government's continuing this lack of access.
Yeah. Tom, we have systems in place which review these measures. We don't allow journalists to just walk into other prison facilities or remand centres. There does need to be a system in place which doesn't provide people the opportunity to use their position to either harm themselves or others. I think the government's record here is one of, yes, making tougher decisions, but ones that have led to much, much better outcomes in terms of people not now risking their lives and not engaging in what is a reprehensible trade.
Okay, I do want to quickly get to one other topic. Sorry, Janet Rice, I'm going to quickly have to get to one other topic because we're nearly out of time. But Matthew Canavan, your focus today as well has been on making more tax more family friendly. In particular, you're promoting the value of stay-at-home mums. You're essentially saying in the Financial Review in an article today that the argument made that women in Australia, that they need higher representation in the workforce, has been cherry-picked. I'm interested, is this a message to Joe Hockey as much as anyone?
Oh, look, it's certainly something that we've been on record as national senators for a long time, including during the debate on the PPL. Yes, there are some issues with female workforce participation, particularly with families of children between 3 and school age. But overall, we've got a very good record on workforce participation for females. Indeed, we're above average for the OECD, and overall, our overall workforce participation rate is the 5th highest in the OECD. So
so is Joe Hockey over-egging that case that he says we have to get more women in the workforce? Well, is that something he's over-egging?
As I said, at certain age groups, absolutely we need to do that, and I recognise that. But I also think we shouldn't devalue or not recognise the value of families that try to support their children by staying at home and looking after them, because there's another study out today that shows the benefits of that, and we should recognise that.
Janet Rice, your thoughts on this as well?
Yes, well, in fact, I agree with Senator Canavan that we shouldn't devalue the choices of women that choose to stay at home and look after their children, but that's a very different issue to childcare. We're facing a crisis of affordable childcare in our society that means that women who want to go back to work can't afford to because they can't afford the childcare. So having a childcare system that enables women to be able to afford to have quality childcare, to enable them to work and to fulfil their potential as both as workers as well as mothers, is something that we really need to be tackling properly.
Okay, well, we are right out of time on today's program, but Senator Janet Rice and Senator Matthew Canavan, thanks for your time today on Sky News. Thank you, of course, for watching at home, and stay with us. Well, coming up is Newsday.